All right, Penn State playing Ole Miss in the Peach Bowl. Definitely a shock. I was not expecting it, but I'm all for it. We'll get into that in a second. I just got done watching the selection show. I turned off the TV, came straight to my laptop, plugged the microphone in, and we are ready to go. This is a knee-jerk reaction, not getting into any of the X's and O's of the game, not getting into strategy or anything like that, just talking about the general vibes of the team right now, of the fan base heading into bowl season. This is a critical time for Penn State football moving forward, and I can't wait to discuss it all. I also did want to do a little bit of a season recap, which we could get more into after the season, but here we stand after 12 games going into the Peach Bowl, another New Year's Six bowl game. Definitely wanted to run through everything that has progressed and gone down this season because there's a lot to talk about, but this will be one of the shorter videos, maybe 15, 20 minutes, because the Eagles are about to kick off against the 49ers, and I got to watch that. So starting off with the bowl game, as I said, I was not expecting this matchup at all. I tweeted this morning, I thought it was either going to be Georgia, the two-time reigning national champions, or it was going to be Liberty. And it was going to be the widest range imaginable. It was either going to be extreme happiness or extreme disappointment. Instead, we wind up in the middle. I'm completely fine with this matchup. I actually think it's the sexiest matchup out of any of the New Year's Six bowl games. You look at the playoff, it's incredible, but then you look outside of the playoff, those other four games are not good at all. Ohio State, Missouri is dull. I feel terrible for Oregon. They're the ones who got sacked with Liberty. And then Florida State, Georgia, who wants to be in that game? I think Florida State's going to come out to play, but Georgia, that might set the record for the most opt-outs in a bowl game ever. Not that enticing. I think our matchup, is probably the most enticing one. Playing Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss, who I would say they're probably the best comp that you could make for us in another conference. A team that is clearly the number three. For us, we're number three to Ohio State and Michigan. For them, it's Alabama and Georgia. They lost to both Alabama and Georgia this year. We lost to both Ohio State and Michigan, teams that have been consistent for the past however so years, and they just have not gotten over the hump yet. So I like the matchup. I think it's pretty fair. I think it fits well. And again, it's not Liberty. That's the thing that is the biggest win of the day. We're not playing Liberty. We're not playing SMU. It's not going to be another situation like the Cotton Bowl in 2019. We get to play a legitimate SEC opponent, and it sparks just this feeling of optimism and this overall excitement for this bowl game, both for the fan base and I think for the team especially. When it comes to Georgia, because I was preparing myself that we were going to have to play Georgia, I would have been all for that as well. Listen, this has been a very underwhelming football season for Penn State, which we'll get into in a little bit. But it would have been a hell of a consolation prize for a team that thought that they could win a Big Ten title and compete for a national championship when it was all said and done. Not to make it to the playoff, but to face the two-time defending national champions. That's a pretty solid outcome for you. If you lose two games, but you still get a chance to go up against Georgia, a team that's won 29 of the last 30, that would have been an amazing opportunity. Maybe we would have lost that one, but at least I think we could have competed. This is a team that ever since Yurcich has been fired, yes, struggled early on against Rutgers, but then looked completely different against Michigan State. It seems like the offense has simplified a lot. Looks like Aller's playing with more confidence. Allen, Singleton, they've been able to get into the mix much more, both in the running game and in the passing game, spreading the ball around. The defense is still a national championship level defense. And you saw how much Georgia struggled yesterday. I don't know. I think we would have had a shot against Georgia. I actually think, because I came into yesterday, Saturday, conference championship day, I came in thinking I'd rather play Bama than Georgia. But with Milroe's ability with his legs, I think we'd be better off against Georgia. And as you saw yesterday, Alabama looked like they were definitely the better team. So it would have been maybe a loss, but with overall just how this team has really been unified after the Michigan loss, how they've been saying they're committed to the program, they're loyal, they're going to be bought in. And yeah, we saw it against Michigan State. Yeah, they got a lot of positive momentum going right now. And Georgia, as I think we'll most likely see in the Orange Bowl, they're probably all just not going to care. So that would have been a very intriguing matchup. And I think that would have been a huge springboard into next year but this is the second best option. I take Ole Miss over Missouri just because, again, it's the sexier play, playing Lane Kiffin over Missouri, who kind of just sprouted up this year. And yeah, I feel bad that Ohio State now has to play in that game. I said last night, I thought Ohio State had a better claim to the playoff this year than they did last year. And they made it in last year. It just happens that there are more teams vying for that last playoff spot. So yeah, they wouldn't be able to get in this year, but that's a good football team that could absolutely win a national championship if they were given the opportunity to compete, but they did not. And we're not going to get into the whole playoff fiasco. But yeah, college football, fun day. It's a fun day for college football. Teams got screwed. Some teams got in and maybe they shouldn't. I don't know, but it's dramatic. It's chaotic, and it's a great product overall because there are the debates, there are the arguments, and Penn State, thankfully, winds up in a very good position after today. I am so excited for the bowl game. Another 3 weeks of practice for this team. I'm also excited to see how Andy Kotelnicki comes into the mix. I think that's how you say his name. I read the pronunciation the other day, and I'm confident that's how you say it. But I can't wait to see his introductory press conference. I don't know when that will be. Manny Diaz, he had his first one, I think it was on like December 17th. So I'm hoping we could get one with Coach Kotelnicki coming up, because he seems to be a guy that is very, very impressive behind the podium. He seems like a football guy, a lovable guy who has great energy, but is also clearly very smart when it comes to the game of football. Totally opposite behind the podium compared to Yurcich. Not to critique Yurcich for how he talks to the media. All that matters is how you talk to the team, but just seems to be a totally different vibe, totally different personality, one that I typically gravitate more towards. And I'm very excited to see how he comes into the program, changes up the energy. I think there's a lot of excitement right now for what he's going to be able to do. And again, I hope that he does get into the mix fairly quickly. If he's not in the mix already, we don't know exactly what his involvement is at the moment. But yeah, going off of the bowl game, now we have a really exciting matchup against Ole Miss, an SEC opponent, and then the offensive coordinator news, where we now have a new OC who's hopefully going to bring more life into this offense. It's great. There's so much, as I said earlier, positive momentum going into December 30th and going into the offseason, assuming you can come out with a good game plan. And I know it's going to be Ty Howell and Ja'Juan Seider, not Kotelnicki, putting together the game plan for this game against Ole Miss. But you hope that we have a good game plan going into that matchup. We win the game and we wind up 11-2 with a New Year's Six bowl game. I think we'd be the first team ever to win all 6 of the New Year's Six bowl games. I'm not sure. Somebody's going to have to check me on that. But it would be a great way to cap off the season, especially considering how overall disappointing it was. But going back to Kotelnicki, I'm so excited to see what he's able to implement. I haven't been following a whole lot of Kansas football, but from what I've read, what everybody who does follow Kansas football, everybody who follows this sport from a national perspective, everybody seems to say that this is maybe the best hire that you could have made in this cycle. This was the guy people were going to target. Kansas clearly does not have a whole lot of talent. They've never been a football school. Now they're at a spot where, if not for the injuries of their star quarterback, yeah, they could have been maybe a 9-win football team, maybe 10-win football team. They had a legitimate team. I don't know exactly how to phrase it, but they had a legitimate team in the Big 12 that at least could cause some problems for the elite of the conference, as we saw against Oklahoma. So they are really scrappy. They've done a lot of stuff offensively that's really creative. They have a lot of window dressing, but it seems like it's still fairly simplistic in terms of the execution. And Yurcich, I think one of the bigger critiques of him this year was that it was so complicated in what we were trying to pull off once the ball was snapped. It was like the wide receivers had no idea what was going on. There was a bunch of disconnect, and you saw it once Ja'Juan and Ty Howell came into the mix after Yurcich was fired. Things just got much simpler. People seemed to be more on the same page. Like it worked. It worked out. And maybe it was just because we were facing Michigan State, who's a dumpster fire. Maybe it's not. We'll find out on December 30th. But Kotelnicki definitely seems like he tends to be more creative and disguise the simplicity. But at the end of the day, it still is pretty simple, and the players will be able to grasp it and run it effectively. I like how he's using 2 quarterbacks. I think Bo Perbula, the fact that he was misused this entire season, is part of the reason why Yurcich is no longer here anymore. I'm excited to see what we're able to do with a 2 quarterback package. I like the fact that Kotelnicki, even though, yes, it's all of this razzle dazzle for the most part, he still does like to run the football. Kansas's running numbers this year were great. Part of that has to do with the fact that they had a little bit of a running quarterback. That's obviously different with Drew Aller. But still, I think Allen and Singleton should be able to flourish. Going off of Aller, though, this is the true test of it all. Can you come in and put together a system that works for Drew Aller and takes into account maybe the deficiencies that we have elsewhere in the offense? Wide receiver. That's the test. Can you put Aller in a good position to succeed? Yurcich, even though Aller was his boy, was not able to do that. And that's all that this comes down to. I know that James Franklin has primarily had a running quarterback, and that's what we're used to. And we try and have that same RPO style wrinkle in our offense. It's not working anymore. It's not working with a guy like Drew Aller. And was that a part of the criteria when Kotelnicki came here? Can you help Drew Aller in his development, and can you put together a system that can get away from that? Oh, yeah, well, we have to have a running quarterback. And that's why, yeah, when you see Bo Prabula go in the game, the offense is so much better. But when Drew's out there, it stinks. We need to utilize Drew's talents to the best of our ability. And we also, if you're Franklin, need to let Kotelnicki do his thing. I think that's part of the reason why, even though Shiraka was a great hire when he was hired, why Yurcich was a home run hire when he was hired, I think that's part of the reason why these guys haven't panned out. How much influence is James Franklin having on the offensive scheme? We're seeing it with the defense. Seems like Franklin's totally hands off and just lets Manny Diaz do whatever Manny Diaz wants to do. And it's paid off. And Franklin has admitted these past couple of weeks, this defense is better, significantly better than anything we ever had under Brent Pry. How is that going to work now with Kotelnicki coming into the mix? I don't know, but hopefully it all pans out. Like I said, we thought Shiraka was going to be good. We thought Yurcich was going to be good. They didn't pan out. Hopefully third time's a charm here with Kotelnicki. Again, it does seem to be that this was Franklin's top option. We got him, and this was a hot name coming into this offseason. Credit to Franklin for being aggressive. Credit to Franklin for getting him at the drop of a hat. And now hopefully we're in a situation similar to Diaz in 2021, where he's able to integrate himself a little bit into this program prior to the bowl game. And get out there on the recruiting trail maybe. I don't know. This is a major month between the OC hire, all this buzz about the bowl game, getting people back on board, ending the season on a high note. You got National Signing Day, you got the recruiting site, everything. This is going to be pivotal for Penn State going into 2024 because, 2023, we kind of flubbed it up. Just we'll get into that right now. I've said that this has been the most disappointing year of my Penn State football fan lifetime. And a bunch of people have pushed back on it. A bunch of people are misinterpreting what the word disappointing means. It's expectations not being met. I think the only other year where I've had legitimate expectations for Penn State to compete for a playoff. I'm sorry, we're now getting into the part of the video where I start stumbling on my words. The only other year where I thought Penn State could compete for the playoff was 2017. And even that, as I've alluded to before, I didn't trust our offensive line that year. I didn't think we had as many defensive playmakers on that side of the ball. If we had made it into the playoff that year, I don't know if we would have been able to stick around with an Alabama or a Georgia or an Oklahoma back when they had Baker Mayfield. I don't know. I don't know exactly if we would have been able to get it done that year. This year, I thought on paper we had a team that could win it all, really, legitimately. And not only did they lose the two games that mattered the most, when in reality, I think still to this day, we should have beat Ohio State. But every other game this year really was not that exciting. And they never really looked like they were a national championship level team. And some people would disagree with that. West Virginia, I'll just go week by week, and I don't have the schedule up, so I'm going to try and do it off of memory. West Virginia, the first drive was incredible. That deep long ball to Keandre Lambert-Smith that resulted in the touchdown was Drew Aller's first touchdown pass of the year. Everybody's thinking, oh, my God, we're insane. I was thinking it up in the stands. I was there at that game. We're winning the Big Ten. We're going to the playoff after that drive. But the rest of the game, if you remember correctly, West Virginia largely controlled it in terms of time of possession. They were running the football. They were picking up first downs. Our defense has been sensational this year. But that game, they weren't necessarily. They couldn't get West Virginia off the field. And we wound up in a situation where, what was it, 31-16 or 31-15 in the fourth quarter. It really was not that convincing of a win. And then Bo Burbula scores a touchdown with 6 seconds left on the clock. And that's when it becomes, I think it was 38-15. But yeah, it was not necessarily a blowout. The offense struggled at times in that game. Like, it wasn't that great of an opener. Then we play Delaware? It's Delaware. Then we play Illinois, struggled against Illinois mightily on the road. Then it was the Iowa game, which that, if you had to point to a complete performance, that might be the front runner. But there were a lot of moments in that first half where I'm thinking, this is very meh. This is not a fun game to watch. We're not really clicking. We're playing this, okay, let's kind of try and run it down their throats. But then when that fails, we're just going to punt it, and that's it. Eventually, we broke through the cracks in the third and fourth quarter, rolled them down, and they were just completely worn out. But it took a while to get to that point. It was not a fun game to watch because it was, a lot of punting, a lot of just blah football. Fifth game, what was that? Was that Northwestern? Yeah, that was Northwestern. Struggled in the first half at Northwestern. We're down for a large chunk of the first half at Northwestern. Then we went into the bye, then played UMass. It's UMass, and then Ohio State, even though, it wound up being a one-possession game. You never felt that we could win that game because of how inept the offense was. It was brutal. And then Indiana the next week almost lost that game at home to 2-5 Indiana. And I'm blanking on who we played after that. Was it Maryland? Yeah, Maryland. Maryland came through, and I apologize. I'm just rambling through the schedule. Maryland, we looked pretty dominant, but then that all got ruined the next week when we went into Michigan and came out just the same as we did against Ohio State. Yeah, we were slightly better offensively in that game, but when it came down to it in the second half, we needed to go out and get a drive to win the game. We couldn't do it. And it was because of a terrible game plan, bad coaching, and the receivers were god-awful. Then we follow that game up. What was it, Rutgers? Yeah, Rutgers. Boring. That game was not a resounding win. It was like the same type of game that we always have against Rutgers in November when none of the students are there. And it was a dull game. And the Michigan State was the one game where I was like, okay, that was awesome all around. But my point in saying that is this team has never looked like a national championship winning team. Maybe against Michigan State, but again, it's Michigan State. They didn't have improvement throughout the course of the season. In many ways, they regressed. And they just looked like a team with all this talent that didn't know what to do with it. That's the most disappointing part of the season. And that's why I say it's the most disappointing season of my Penn State lifetime. In 2017, like I said, I had major expectations for that team. We didn't live up to those expectations, but at least we still had really solid games that were fun to watch. Iowa on the road was fun to watch, even though it came down to the wire. Michigan beating them 42-13 in the whiteout. I was there at that game. That's the most fun I've ever had at a Penn State football game. We blew them out of the water. There were games that year you could hang your hat on and say, no, this team was really good. Here, I don't know. I don't know if you can hang your hat on a game and say, yeah, that team, they were maybe better than their record indicated. No, I think our record is pretty much the way it should be. You can make the argument, maybe it should be worse. I don't know. But yeah, this team just, for whatever reason, again, I think it's coaching. I think it's now maybe, as we'll see in the bowl game, Yursich being completely unqualified to put together a competent game plan for Drew Howler. I don't know. Wide receivers. All I know is that this team had the possibility, had the capability of going to the playoff, winning it all based on the schedule, based on the roster, based on the coaching staff, based on all this buy-in from the university now. And they seemed miles away from doing that. So hopefully this bowl game is one final chance to put an exclamation on this season, because again, I don't really think that we've had an exclamation point on this year yet. And you get all of a sudden this paradigm shift where you look at this team a little bit differently. Last year, 10-2 was really good for that unit, for that young team. Yeah, we lost to Michigan. Yeah, we lost to Ohio State, but that was kind of expected. 10-2 was solid. It was fair. And it was a very good feeling to be 10-2 at the end of the year. But then you beat Utah in the Rose Bowl, and it turns a good feeling into an unbelievable feeling. I was elated after we beat Utah in the Rose Bowl, because I could look back on the season and say, no, that was a really, really amazing year for Penn State football. Hopefully, it's kind of the same way this year with Ole Miss, where if we beat them, I still won't think it's an amazing year for Penn State football. But you look back and say, you know what, maybe it wasn't that bad. And now we have a lot of juice heading into next year. I thought we had a lot of juice coming into this year. We didn't own up to it. But who knows? Maybe next year could be better. And I think we better throw a blank check at Manny Diaz. And if he's able to stay around, which I don't think he will, but if he does, you get a new offensive coordinator. There's a lot of positive hype about that. Then you bring back Manny Diaz. Everybody would be elated. They'd be through the roof over that renewal of his contract. And then you still have a ton of talent across the board. Yeah, you lose some big names to the NFL, but there's still a lot of positive energy heading into 2024. And I'm going to convince myself again that this is a team that could possibly compete for a Big Ten title. Obviously, things get a little bit blurrier next year, which is why I said this was the year to get it done. Yeah, you don't play Michigan, but now you get all those teams coming in from the Pac-12. It's going to be more challenging to have one loss or go undefeated in a regular season in the Big Ten. But you never know. You never know. This is why this month is so pivotal. It's been a weird year. It's been a frustrating year. But if you could go out on a high note, beat an SEC opponent, then get Kotelnicki into the mix. Again, I hope we can bring back Manny Diaz. It's a long shot, but I'm not ruling it out. You could maintain all of this momentum that you've built up over the course of however many years. It won't just go away, because I was fearful after Ohio State and especially after Michigan that it would go away and we lose out on recruits and we lose out on transfers and we'd have people transfer. So far, the buy-in from everybody, particularly led by Drew Aller and Nick Singleton, has been sensational. They've come out and said, unprompted, really, no, we're locked in. We're all about this program, and we're going to do whatever we can this year, next year, to bring this school a national championship. Is essentially what they've been saying. You could tell they're dedicated and they're devoted to this team and to Franklin, which you got to give them credit. This team could have easily quit. This team could have easily bailed, as they could have last year. After the Ohio State game, they could have given up on the year. The season's over. We're not competing for a playoff. We're not competing for a national championship. We have 2 losses. We're done. This team doesn't seem to be doing that. You might have opt-outs because we have some big-time NFL names who can go to the draft and they might not want to play in the bowl game, but I don't know. But when it comes to the young core and when it comes to the people who are going to be sticking around for next year, no, they want to play. And they feel terrible about what happened this year from what it seems. And they want to end this season on a high note and then come back next year and come back with a vengeance. So that's all great to see. That's pretty much all I got, I guess. I got to give credit to Franklin, like I said, because, yeah, he does not have teams that bail. He does not have teams, except for maybe 2021, that have just given up on a season. No, they come back firing. Everybody loves him in the program. Yeah, I know a lot of fans hate him. Like I said this year, I look at him differently now, but you can't deny that everybody within the program, they fight for him, they play for him, and I hope that they come out with the same intensity against Ole Miss. It's going to be very fun to watch. Another noon kickoff. What is that? I mean, Michigan was a noon kickoff. Rutgers was a noon kickoff. Michigan State night game, but Friday night. And then now we got another noon kickoff. I'm going to go back and tally up all the noon kickoffs this year. It's destroying the sport. It is absolutely awful. And I know this isn't a Fox big noon kickoff, but we just can't catch a break. I would love to play a game just at 3:30. I'm not even asking for a night game. Give us a 3:30 game. Not the case again when we face Ole Miss on December 30th in the Peach Bowl. I can't wait to watch. This has been a weird year, a very, very weird year, but I can't lie. I'm stoked. I'm stoked for this bowl game. Let's bring the fans back. Let's get everybody on board for 2024. Let's beat the Rebels, and let's have a time. December 30th. See you there. My name is Connor Griffin. Thanks for tuning in. We'll have more after the bowl game. I'll be back for one last chat, I guess you could say. But until then, this has been Connor Griffin signing off. We are